Firstly, a big thank you to Sharath and Chitra. They've come literally. They literally flew in an hour and a half ago. They're here just for this talk. So thanks all of you for. They come from Bangalore. So thanks all of you for coming and listening to them. A brief introduction. I don't know Chitra for very long. We met at a couple of architecture conferences. Sharath and Chitra have been working together for many years. Chitra originally had her own private practice, and then she transformed it in. She merged with kind of her husband's work with rainwater harvesting and with water management, and created a company that's doing deep environmental work with buildings, with water management, and with ecology. I'm not going to speak too much more. Thanks again. Chitra, thanks for coming. Sharath, thanks.
Thank you.
We'll have your presentation, then we'll have a Q&A.
Thank you, Kushru, for inviting. It's great to come here. This is not the first time I'm coming to Pune. I think it's the fourth time. But I love coming here. And just for introduction's sake, my husband too is here, Vishwanath. So, and he would also be part of the discussions here. Yeah. We call our practice as a mainstream practice rather than a practice which is doing an ecological building, like one off, all the rest being conventional. And this started extremely serendipity. There was nothing like we said we will do only ecological, so at least not, there was no we also, it was just I, that we'll start and I'll do this ecological practice. Vishwanath was with Hutco. He knew, Vishwanath is my husband, so he was with Hutco and he knew about Laurie Baker's works, and Hutco was promoting Laurie Baker at that time. So we said in Bangalore after 1990 people were building a lot of homes because the market has opened, and it said that people can buy plots and build their own homes, and when that started they wanted to have a Baker home. So everybody wanted an economical home rather than ecological. So the first few, which is what I'm going to talk a bit of our history, is very much learning from Baker. And it was the architecture of the small, I call it, really small buildings, something like this. This is in fact not a complete building. This is a wall made for a classroom at Spastic Society. And again, learning from Baker, thin walls turned around, which is becoming storages. And this was a bus shelter which was turned into a classroom where children on wheelchair could come and use it. Furthermore, this was for ISKCON, again a small temple, a hexagon, but most of the time the rider is do it fast and do it cheap. Again, exposed brickwork here. We used the scaffolding of split bamboo and put ferrocement above it and left it. So the scaffolding remains and the rest of the walls are rat trap. So you can see a bit of it. And this is just a very nice picture. We thought it's, makes difference. But it's the first time we used solar panels. Solar panels were lighting up the temple, which is also accommodation. So people stayed in the night as well as running the pump. So there is an overhead tank. So this is a building which was done without electricity. This is about 25 years old when we didn't have the concept of taking a generator to the place. So that's why you don't see railings in the staircase. Everything else is either ferrocement or brickwork and I think a bit of stone. So more of, again, using Baker and like using this thing. I'm sure you all are aware of filler slab. It started becoming more of a fashion rather than what Baker talked about, frugality, and it wasn't happening. It's very difficult. Like we wouldn't get the worst kind of tiles which Baker would get in Kerala, and the clients wouldn't like a tile with a crack. So we are using nice, good quality tiles. And also in the whole process, the contractors would say, no, I can't leave the structure like that. It doesn't look nice. And the client also would agree to them, and they would go about finishing it beautiful. This is a beautiful roof. No, I don't contend that it's not a nice roof, but it was very expensive. So where is Baker here? It's only an ornament, and one felt not very comfortable about that. That is talking about Baker, but one is using it for something which is more ornamental and a lot more expensive than what it should be philosophically. But we are trapped as architects. We follow what the client wants and we have to do. So it comes along that we buy a plot of our own and we decide we'll build our house. So we become our own patrons, and we go to the site and we see this neighbor is digging his foundation, and the soil was just lovely. So I said, this is the best soil possible, so we'll have a basement in our house. So we designed a basement. Though in this picture it looks very nice, it's one of the worst basement Biome has ever designed. It's very small windows, so you're learning from failure, and it's always nice to learn. And this was our first office. Now it's only a TT table. It was our first office. It was nice space, but a lot of learning from this basement. We took out the earth enough. When we were digging, people would come and ask, what is this? So we also used to joke around that it's a swimming pool we are making. So people walk around and see your construction. But by the time we reached a certain stage, people around were saying, build our house the same way, even before we finish our house. So we used this earth, which we removed, for a couple of other very small homes. So that's the interior. We thought the color of earth would be different from the color of bricks, and luckily it's not. So it's nice and monochrome. The roofs are arch panels which are precast and then placed. And so we went further in the basement. It's with RCC beams. Basement has very less light, so it's painted. But in the above we used steel beams. So we are also improvising. Of all what we are learning from Indian Institute of Science Civil Engineering Department, which had worked a lot on this at Astra. This is alternative science and technology for rural areas, and they've been working since 70s on earth technology, different kind of roofing systems and ferrocement. So we're learning a lot from Bangalore. So this is all what we say is we garnered the learning from whatever research was happening in Bangalore. And then on the way, as we were building, we realized that we could manipulate the heights and said, let's add a mezzanine. And a lot of it comes from Vishwanath. I'm not kind of crediting him because he's sitting here, but generally, yes, a lot of thought. I do the hard work, so many times.
By the way, the basement is my office now.
He never worked, so his offices. So we added this mezzanine. So we have no idea right now as how Bangalore climate works. We've been just adding stuff. And so what we see is that we're learning and theorizing through our works now. And that's been an interesting part of how we look at this. So the basement becomes a place which is 22 degrees centigrade throughout the year, used for daytime use when it's really hot. And Bangalore, it's really hot when it is 35. Okay, all the Bangaloreans will say, oh my God, it's so hot. But yes, we all feel it because otherwise it's 15 or 20. So basement is the ideal space, but then nights get cooler. And it's a diurnal temperature in Bangalore. So nights get colder. The mezzanine is the right space to sleep in. You can't go there in the summer, but otherwise in most of the year, you could use that. So I'm alone most of the time. I have slowly people coming and working with me, but expectation was that they will come for 2 years and then they will start on their own. So really didn't have a team who's working with in the office for long, but luckily had a team which would build. So a lot of homes would come about. People just want to come and want a home. Helps because it's a woman, and also helps that, okay, she can get it done. And we also worked out, we did rate analysis and worked out rates for the whole construction. So it doesn't come as, it's not an iffy thing that we don't know what the cost would be. The client would know what the end cost would be. If it's changing, they would know where they are exceeding or what's happening, why the changes are happening still. So this is something we're very proud of. So this is Biome's office. I think it's the blue circle. And around it, we have done about 50 homes. So there was a movement for some time. The area is called Vidyaranyapura to be changed to Chitra Ranyapura. That didn't happen. So it's like this. So Georgina, I do a house for her, then her brother's house, and then her friend's house. So this is a line of homes. The smallest being just 300 square feet. The largest being something like 600. So again, we're talking about lots of homes in Bangalore now, all over, north, south, east, west. But now this is about 2008, where we're saying now it's Biome. So the name changed in 2008 from Chitra Vishwanath Architects, which was total lack of creativity in naming an office. It came with, in fact, when I started, I didn't even write. And first of all, we didn't make many drawings. In fact, our house, we didn't even have drawings. I didn't have time to do drawings. But luckily, again, because of Bangalore, the very first month I had 5 homes to do. So I always had lots of work to do. So even when we're designing our house, I was also working on 22 more houses. So we always have this number. So that's why the house has very bad details. Certain details I wish I could change, but didn't have time. But by 2008, we were working a lot on water. Vishwanath had left HUDCO and he was working on water. And we were also incorporating water a lot in our designs because we saw that as huge scarcity in the city. And it's not enough to just design spaces, but look at how the building would live. So water, sanitation, energy, all of it started coming. So in 2008, we decided we'll change the name. And also that's when the logo came about and stuff. So it's called Biome. So Biome is ecology of a place. And that also came about because of people like Sharath had already probably been there for 8 years by 2008. Yeah, almost 5-6 years. So people were staying longer. So it's no longer, this one-woman domain at all. And I'm also quite lazy in the sense that I devolve power. It's so much better if you devolve, then you can do a lot of other things. So, and there were people, 5 years, 6 years, you're an architect on your own. So why should it be in one's name? So we decided Biome. And now Sharath will take over. So you come this way.
So I'll be taking you now through 3 small homes we've done in the last 10 years from when we became Biome. So the first one in 2008 to the last one which was finished last year. So this is Hamsa's home. It was originally Hamsa and Harsha's home. So Hamsa and Harsha are a brother and sister. So they needed 2 homes for them. So the big home that you see at the back, that belonged to their father. So they were living with their parents and they wanted a space not so far away from home, but where they could do their work or just chill around. So yeah, we developed this plan for them. So both these homes are essentially bachelor pads with a loft. So your lower level, it's something like this. At the lower level you have the living space, a small kitchenette and a toilet. So where you meet your friends, you spend your time where you work. And on the upper level is where you had your sleeping spaces. So we chose to build this home with rammed earth. Now, this was a conscious choice dictated by the site situation. What happens in most of our projects, we dig a basement, you have some empty space next to your land, you make bricks there. Now, this is bang in the middle of the city where you don't have additional land. So we chose rammed earth because you could get earth from elsewhere in small quantities and use it, then get the next bit of earth. So that's how each is. So this is the lower level. So when these photos were taken, this particular unit was rented out as an office. So what you see, the lower level is the living space where you see the fridge. That's where the pantry is, and you go upstairs to the sleeping space.
That's a sleeping
Yeah, that's the one. And this is the unit at the top. So again here you see the loft here is built with steel, whereas the lower one is with concrete. So this again was that we needed formwork, shuttering to make rammed earth. And it was quite an investment because this is really a small building. So what we did at the end was we used this back to build a floor. And thankfully for us, this was a client who understood what we were talking. So we do have rugged finishes, unfinished concrete slabs, a very limited palette of materials.
Talk a little louder or use this.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, don't use that.
Yeah. So the next project, it's called Hornbill House. So it's a part of a larger project we designed, a set of 9 homes in Kunur. Kunur is in Tamil Nadu. So this is a tea and coffee estate. So they were looking at putting up a hospitality facility. So we designed 9 villas for them, and Hornbill is one of them. They eventually built only 3, 2 of which were renovations. So this was the only new building which came up. So when the clients came to us, they came up with this brief that build us 9 homes or villas in one location and we'll rent it out. So one day we walked around with them on the site. It's a 135 acre site. So we came up with this proposal. It had a road network. So we came up with a proposal that why not exploit positively this thing that, different location has a different experience. So you build 9 villas which are totally different and built to what that location offers. So they agreed to the idea, and so Hornbill is one of them. It sits on which is this one. So this sits on a elevated piece of land here. So to the front you have views of, these are the Coimbatore ranges. So in the night you can even see Coimbatore city from here, which is a 3 or 4 hour drive. And down here is a waterfall, and to the back is the tea estate itself. So what we proposed is a unit where from each room you have a prominent view and then glimpses of the rest. And this was a bit of a fancy that we took. It's sitting on an elevated place, so why not give it a wing-like appearance? So that's what it is. So again, we choose the outer walls of stone because it was sitting next to a rock outcrop, and inner wall. So it's a composite wall. The inner walls are of mud bricks. These are again, the soil was from the land. When they fixed their roads, they got this soil. So that's about it. So these are different views of this house. That's the living space. And the bathrooms overlooking the waterfall. When the picture was taken, there was no water there. And that's a night shot.
So it's this interesting thing about this hugs a jackfruit tree. And when there are ripe jackfruit, bear come. So you can almost sit inside the room and see a bear eating.
Yeah, bears and
jackfruit
elephants.
And elephants.
Yeah. It's one of, what do you call these, the last property. So after that, a reserve forest. So you have wildlife coming in often. This is a house we finished recently. It's a very small plot, what we call in Bangalore as 30-40 plots, the tiniest that you get. So when the client came to us, this is what the site was like. You had the neighbor built with almost no setback, and it's the same situation on the other side as well, which you see here. And then this wonderful large tree on the front, but you can notice the canopy covers almost half the site. Right, so yes, the first intuition was, what do we do about this? So after a couple of, this was very close to my home, so I would pass by this every day. So we started observing this tree. So this tree has a peculiar thing that you see the flowers only from a distance, But when you're below it, you just see the canopy, and then you get this carpet of flowers on the floor. So what we gave them a proposal. Thankfully for us, they didn't want to build lots. And there was a bit of negotiation. They wanted a dining space, so spoke to them, where do you eat? It was in front of the TV, so why do you need a dining space? So we managed to cut down what they wanted to build. So we gave them this proposal where the house steps back as it goes taller. We did end up cutting a branch, but then that was it. What this also allows you is this the experience of the tree that I described. Now you experience the tree differently at different levels. The neighbors had built such that you can't get any light, and if I'm right, the tree is probably on the south side, which is blocking the sun as well. So in our proposal, we proposed we proposed for a large skylight here. So that becomes your primary source of light and ventilation, and then we closed out the neighbors. So this is what we have eventually. One of the things we drew is this way of wall building. This is mostly compound walls which are built in the villages around Bangalore. Slabs of granite just put vertically into the ground, and with time, when the needs go higher, they add a roof onto it and start using it. So this client gave us he had one more thing in his brief. I don't want tiles in my bathroom. So this is like, how do you build an earth wall and not have tiles? Also, an architect, Shankar Kanade, the Kanade brothers, they used to use this technique a lot in Bangalore. So we referred to that, and all the toilet walls are predominantly stone slabs standing vertical in steel sections. I'll show you the finished pictures, but that's what we have. The cross section, So the cross section steps up. On the lower level is the living and kitchen, and this huge skylight affords that you're below the canopy when you're in the living room or you're working in the kitchen, and you have a guest bedroom there and the primary bedroom, which opens to a closed court. Now this again is a small courtyard we managed in a modern house. This is a very young couple who also entertain a lot. So they had also this ask that when our friends come over, we don't want them to come in through the house where our parents are, but we rather have them come up directly to the roof. So we added this staircase in the front, which through this gate allows them into this courtyard. At other times, the courtyard is connected to the bedroom, so they can step out and read a book. At the room at the top is a home office for Arvind. At one point, Priya said, now Arvind has his own space, I want mine. So then how do we fit this in? Eventually figure out she just wants to read, so we gave her a elevated seat here. So we managed that. But again, if you observe the cross section of the house, it varies a lot. Now this was determined by the height of the stone slabs that we get. So we managed to fit it into the use of the house. So that's the living room. Of course, it's without the furniture. And that's what you see from the kitchen when you're working in the kitchen. You go up, that's the living room with Priya's seat and the courtyard across. And that's the stone wall for the toilets. The courtyard in the front. So we closed, the neighbors can't see what's happening in here. And that's the staircase which leads to Arvind's space. Yeah. Okay. So now this question of why, it's like, why do we do things the way we do it? So sort of tell you the context that we work in. That's Bangalore city from 1990 to 2016. You can see the population almost has gone up 3 times. And you can also see the change in land use. The red was the built up and the green was the vegetation. Now there's hardly or very little green left. So this is the context we work in. So what the graphic said is the same in numbers. So what a city like this, growing city needs is resources. Resources to build, resources to exist, survive, which is your food and water and electricity. And then it produces waste streams. So we work within this stream, and our work tries to address these issues. So a lot of our That's our natural heritage. We have lots of these granite hills on the outskirts. We're quarrying them for concrete. A lot of our material comes from China, wood from Canada, Australia, and other places. So we asked this question, is there another way of doing this? Can we look at the city, the site, or the locality as your quarry? So most of our buildings have a basement space. We work with the owners of the house to see how can the basement fit into their needs. And like Chitra said in the beginning, sometimes you design large basements. There are sites where a basement is not possible for XYZ reasons. So you can adapt a collaborative approach because we do so many homes between two house owners. You can design a large basement for one, and that can provide the earth for another home nearby.
So most of the time it almost comes like from one basement you can build 3 homes. So one is that very home plus 2 others. So we're kind of saying that is now you share the DNA. You're not only sharing a material, but in a larger scale of things, the city is now connected by the material it has used, rather than so it doesn't become just a material. It has more association with it. Because in our own house, we did a mistake in calculation. So we had to get soil from elsewhere, and that soil is a very different color from the rest of the house. It's very nice to say, oh yeah, this came from that part of Bangalore. This was that project one was doing. So I like that whole emotional connect with the soil.
Right. So yeah, we make a basement, we make bricks, and our later buildings are also using rammed earth, adobe, cob. So
mostly the earth is quite unlike here. It has it has about 40% clay, and we use quarry dust, so we can reduce the amount of clay, which should be about 14%, and we make earth blocks at site. So this is how the basement is built.
So you get a space like this. These days, most of our basements have skylights, gardens with them, so it's better lit, better ventilated. You also don't feel that you're underground. And yeah, like we said, houses which don't have basements, you associate it with another project and you get your material. So you want to go through this one?
Yeah. So we were doing this school we did this school in Coimbatore. Again, they wanted it with earth. And Tamil Nadu bylaws don't allow for basements in schools. So what do we do about that? And the client wanted and we want earth. So we said we'll dig everything. We'll dig including the playground. So we dug everything out. So now there's no basement. So you enter at one level. So you enter at a higher level, yes. So you enter into the school and you go down, and so that part which you see this playground is about 1.5 meters below the road level. The road is within the campus, so the road level, but we got so much of earth. We could build, we did compound walls, and we had extra earth available. So it's like, how do you twist it around? You like a material, you want to use that, then how do you push for it? How do you try to get that and not say defeated and oh no, I can't do basement and I can't do that. You can do quite a bit. So here we enter at this level. You can see the blue beginning. I don't know. Yeah, over here we enter and you come down a ramp and you can come down some steps too. So this is all accessible school, totally accessible. You can climb up also by a ramp alone. So, and that's a section which you could see, but I don't think it shows the surrounding. Yeah, here it shows you the surrounding heights and then how we went down. So the classrooms, this was for kindergarten and above up till 4th standard. So the classrooms, instead of using a beam, we used a large arch so that you have the teachers can only move at a certain area, and the children have ability to use the space much more than the teacher has. So it's giving the space to the children rather than to the teachers, because at this area, the teachers can't move. So and also, children are sitting on the floor and studying, so we made jalis at the lower level with mosquito mesh for the air to move on them, on the body, and upper level is glass, and that light comes further inside. The different ways of using the skylights, because it's quite hot, so you couldn't put large pieces of glass, but small glass and lot of shade, play of shade and light. Spaces, I think I'll go for this one. It's quite hot in Coimbatore, and so you can't play outside. So we created the whole play space inside the school itself. And the children climb up the slide and go to the first floor. The passages are these. So all over the place there are a lot of play areas. So this was all about basement. In fact, sorry, the roof here is also arch panels made of earth blocks. So we are also nowadays looking at how less different types of materials we use at the site. So we use as much as possible earth for mortar in the foundation, earth for, in fact, also the PCC is a stabilized PCC, so that's also a lot of earth there. Then you take the mortar, then you make the blocks, you make the roofs.
The foundation itself
sometimes is rammed earth. So just use the same material as much as possible so that we reduce the waste which would happen. And precasting helps a lot, because by the time we reach the roof level, the roof is ready, and you just place them and do a little amount of casting, and you can continue the rest. So we were talking mostly now about basement. We never talk of the middle. Middle space is like everywhere else. I'm just too fond of basements. I want to keep digging as much as possible. And India, we don't use the underground enough at all. Everywhere I go, so many things we could have gone underground, and we're still using all of the ground. And the other space which we don't use is our terrace. I think not in Pune, Yeah, you guys do a lot, but not in Bangalore like this. So that's the Google screenshot of a terrace in terraces, and this is a terrace in Bangalore. And we don't make papad, we don't dry anything, we don't do it in Bangalore. It's only 3 months that we have some kind of sun, so we don't use the terrace at all. But can the terrace be smart? Can it do so much more? Can it provide for living? And that's how we look at the terraces. And we design the terraces now for something called lifeline water. So your drinking and cooking requirement for the whole year, for the family, is from the rain which is falling on your terrace. So you don't depend on Kaveri, you don't have to fight with the Tamilians or anybody, you have your own water. And similarly use it for treating the wastewater, because it's all small plots. And terrace is where you get the largest amount of sun. And to treat the wastewater, you need the sun. So it's on the terrace. Terrace for growing rice. Vishwanath got himself a Mercedes-Benz of a cycle from Angela Merkel as prize, for the idea called rice on the roof. What is it? Growing rice on the roof. Yeah. And then you have a small toilet, and you use the resources which you otherwise call it waste, and use it again on the terrace. And then once you create such an ecosystem, you have biodiversity. Sorry? This is on the roof.
So that one there, the second picture.
Toilet is also on the roof. That Rentflow is a dry toilet. It's a composting toilet. So collect both urine and feces. And this is urine used as fertilizer. Yeah, we have a loo below.
Is that
Is part of?
Yes.
Yeah. That's the rice field.
That's the fertilizer factory for the rice field. So it's not a toilet, it's a fertilizer factory. It's on the roof, yeah. And it's also called urine diverting dry toilet, UDP. So liquids and solids are separated. You use the urine diluted as fertilizer. The solids go into those blue drums, get composted on the rooftop, and you grow stuff in those drums.
So you grow trees now. We have lemon, the sharifa and everything. So this is our house. So our house is a workshop. It's not this lovely space architects make and you go there and do pranam and no. We keep altering, we keep tinkering a lot with our own house because that's what you can do. Where else would you grow rice? Till we do that, and now the clients are doing all sorts of stuff. So here is the rice growing, rice being harvested, and this is the treatment of wastewater on the terrace. All the grey water is treated, used for the plants on the terrace and ground, and for flushing below. There is a conventional toilet below because that came first. The dry toilet came later in the age of our house. Things have been added, so dry toilet came much later. That's the lifeline water tank which collects the rainwater falling on the terrace, which is filtered by a dhoti and kept, and it's nowadays in new designs it's connected right into the kitchen to the filter, and that's used directly for drinking and cooking. So just wanted to show the rice and the cycle. Yes.
How much storage capacity for rainwater do you have?
So you design it according to the roof area, and this one for the lifeline it is 1000 liters right now. But I think rain, Vishwanath will talk a lot more.
The storage capacity is about 10,000 liters, and that gets filled up 10 times in a year. And whatever is excess in an excess year of rainfall, we recharge into the shallow aquifer through a well. So we
So you have a bore recharge system.
it's not a bore, an open well, a small open well.
Okay.
That open well not only caters to the runoff from our rooftop, but also the neighborhood stormwater. It puts in about 1 million liters of rainwater into the aquifer every year. 1 million liters.
That's for an area of
It's about 1,000 square meters, 1,200 square meters roughly. And the well itself is 2 feet in diameter and about 12 feet deep. So that's a particular characteristic of the place that it can absorb a lot of soil and earth.
We are talking about 1200 square meters, like of the community, of the colony, not of the roof. Yeah.
I remember the thought was when you're designing basements, that's
Yeah.
intelligent use of space, but don't face any fear of flooding when excavating a basement.
Our water table is much lower, so you don't design at places where the water table is high at all. So, yeah.
Can I just so in one layout where we are working now on the water component, we had this peculiar problem that all the houses have basements and they're all flooded.
We have it. No?
And
We have it
the layout is buying water from
Don't
private
you
water.
keep Rainbow Drive?
So all we did was to dig some 12 wells. We pump the well water and now the layout gets all its water from the wells and the basements are no longer flooded. So some of these sort of common connects we seem to miss out. So we need to be careful as to where we build basements based on the groundwater table. But usually if you're able to integrate it with your water supply, then you're able to lower the water table and make sure that the basements don't flood.
What if you go to excavate for a basement and use that for water storage? Is that
It's possible. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Either we have the example of Rainbow Drive here. We'll have to. So we make the interns do this. We're talking about the city becoming a productive space of creating of an ecosystem, of creating a total ecosystem.
So the last intervention. So
No, you will have more. Yeah.
one of the things with urban design and urban forms is that typically cities are designed on a transport model. That's about the only driving force. Residents, transport, employment, access, education, and how do you minimize all that? We tend to argue now that cities should also design themselves on the natural resource availability and the wastewater streams they design. So part of this experiment, what it leads us to is that every individual should have a right to 40 square meters, every individual in the city. And we should imagine our neighborhoods and our cities with that 40 square meter by which you can become energy sufficient, water sufficient, and food sufficient, and waste sufficient. So can we start to influence larger design norms of planning, moving from architecture, from the small to the big, is one way that we do.
We will be talking about a larger project where they had worked on water issues. So, sorry? Yeah. So this is now part of the design. You have to design the terrace as to where one will put the wastewater treatment system, because that water should not fall into space where you're harvesting the rainwater. Where would you put the solar panels? Where would you grow anything if you need to? And where would you put the lifeline water? So this whole idea of, again, is just that what you're working at becomes the research, and you start looking at what you've done, say about 6-7 houses, let's see what's happening with that. And so here is about water, and you start noticing that the homes where the number of occupants and the roof area, if you correlate, where they're lesser, there is more water available. So this becomes a yardstick we use when people say, well, how about high rises? See, high rises then are very, very parasitic, because they really can't provide even the drinking water needs of the populace below. So why do we have to think? So why don't we start thinking is in terms of how much roof area should we be providing so that we can be self-sufficient, at least in terms of water, because at least in Bangalore it's one of the most expensive water which comes into the city. So we did our 6 homes, the same homes we studied for resources to build with, the same homes in terms of water. And if they do the grey water treatment, black water treatment, how much water do they really need from outside, and how we can reduce it. So this leads us to another project. This is, the clients call it Eco House. And this house is all designed in terms of the waste it would generate and how the waste would be converted, would be a resource to be converted into food. So in fact, the whole house was designed from the back. It looked at all the pipelines, how all the toilets would be placed, how each different waste would be connected to different systems of reuse. And the professor comes from Stockholm Environmental Institute. He was very keen that this should happen, and we designed the whole house in this term. So, but it takes very little space. At the back, it's taking just about a meter. It's not that it's going to take a lot of space. It takes a meter because all the walls, and then you can arrange everything. And the rest of the house can be a very good architectural feature. So this happens. So all the toilets are at one side. You take all the waste, and then you have a huge basement which gives the earth to build with. And then you get a large terrace, and the terrace becomes the new ground, because you do such good concreting, which can do so much. And if you have a good slope, it's just a new earth where you can now put the modified soil from your waste and create a garden and get all your food. So the green part becomes where he grows all the vegetables and other things. I don't know what else is he growing, but even we made a. Okay, I don't
This
see
is the
it here.
basement, is it?
No, this is not the basement. So here, so we made a grid where the plants would also grow on top. So that's the house. That's the terrace, which would have more plants now. So this is the mezzanine. don't think. That's the penthouse as a house on top, and that's the way the house looks. We'll talk about this.
Yeah. No, you said that I'll use this.
Okay.
So
Then I have to do this
this is a project we did for ISKCON at a place called Wada. This is 100 kilometers north of Mumbai. I think it's 75 acres of farmland in which they wanted a retreat for their devotees. So that's Mumbai, and that's where the land is. So it's by on the foothills of the Sahyadri, and there's a river called the Vaitarna which flows. So it's in between that. So how it began, now they wanted to build with earth, but they themselves were not confident. So it's a large group, some saying yes, some saying no, it works, it does not work. So the first engagement we got with them was to build an earth wall. So we were not so busy at that time, we took it up. One of my colleagues went there, he stayed for a couple of weeks, and he built one, and there are a couple of walls inside, 4 earth walls. Rammed earth walls, yes. So again, stabilized, unstabilized, different mixes. So that's what they did. So once that stage was crossed over, they had not told us there's a larger project. They said there might be some other things. So we had some people move on to this side, but there were still some other naysayers. So what they wanted us was to build one small cottage. So this is, I think, 700-800 square feet cottage that we built for them. It was a 3 or 4 month project which we for which we sent workers from Bangalore. So they watched this through the rain. Once they were confident that this can happen, they offered us a larger project. But what this gave us, because this was a 3-4 year engagement, dialogues, building a wall, them coming to Bangalore, we doing these things for them. So and building this cottage, we learned how the place works, how the climate works, how comfortable is it, what works, what does not. So we sort of got these pointers after having built this one. So we had these strategies. It was the land use was driven by how water works in this land. So this primarily works on groundwater. It's a farmland, but the primary source of water was bore wells. The location was such that whatever water falls, it moves through the land to the river. So there's very little which actually stays on the land. So we commissioned a hydrogeological study, which is a study to understand what happens below your ground. And the findings of that gave us that your site was, there are recharge zones, there are discharge zones, you can hold water here, the water will come out there. So those were the driving factors. So with that study, we had these as our markers for how do we work on the land. Choosing resources, we understood that from different distances you get different resources. Your soil from the farm, we needed corridors to modify. This was clay soil, which was available 11 kilometers away. We need this was a very clay soil, so we needed to stabilize with lime, which came from, I think, Rajasthan. It's a little further away. Yeah, that's the one. But most of the material came from nearby. So this is what the hydrogeological study did. It said that you store water, hold water which comes from the Sahyadris. Over here, it will come out as a come out in the wells here. So based on that, we first decided where the water structures are going to be. We decided to put our buildings on the higher elevations of the land, which is this. So these were our drainages, so that stayed unobstructed. They could continue to do agriculture, and our buildings themselves were very little here. So yeah, the existing land use, there was very little change in the land use. Sorry, this is a repeat. So yeah, these were the different buildings. I think the engagement started in 2009. The last building we finished for them is in 2014, and I think we'll be doing a couple more this year. So it's been a constant process of learning what works, what does not work, both as material, water strategies, techniques.
And also in terms of them itself, They now look at buildings differently. They also didn't know that it will be a hospital. Now it's become a hospitality space. It was a retreat, but a lot of people from Mumbai go there, and now the demands are changing because the Mumbaikars want something else. So they are also evolving as how they engage with people from outside. And what was nice was here we did a SBT, water treatment system, which is called Soil Biotechnology, which came from Indian Institute of Indian Institute of Technology,
Yeah, it's this
Mumbai.
one.
And they're so happy with it that they keep adding to it. And so there is now water even during the dry days because you have people coming.
Yeah, please go on.
So you start looking at people coming as a resource, and we made this large tank which gives them the water, and
That's the water treatment system.
and there is a well, so again they get a lot more water available. So for us, we see it as the development can also be positive. Ideal would be that it remains a forest. It wasn't a forest, it was a teak plantation, though by the time they got the land, all the trees were cut by the
Previous
earlier owners. So we got very dry area, but now it's much more greener and a lot more water available and more people come. But we now discuss, so now just wanted to add some more. And we started looking at the whole water and what are you doing about it? Is this enough? So we have now told them that you can only get 80 more people who can come and stay here in this much land. You can't now build any more and you cannot stress your water. And they've accepted. So like 40 more rooms coming up, not anything more than that. It's a very interesting engagement. Things keep changing, but it's interesting. This, the soil biotechnology,
Yes.
treating all the water, grey and black, everything which comes. So it
Together,
comes,
yes.
yes, together. So it comes in a tank and then it's pumped up. And so there are layers of soil and there are plants above. So the plant's root thrive on the nutrient which comes from the water, and then they take away the nutrient. So and the soil filters it. We almost get clear water after that. It is modified, a different kind of root zone treatment. Yes.
You mentioned that it was accumulating at one point and then it was coming out from wells on the other part of the
Yeah.
site.
Yeah.
So do you have to do any special cupping?
No, we hold it and it filters down into the aquifer and comes down, and at the lower part of the site is where you make a well and you draw the water.
So it's a natural.
It's a natural one,
Just
yes. Holding it there means it will be available for longer. That's
So there are two differences. One is a surface water flow, which is obvious and you can design around it. But groundwater flows are governed by what the geology of the place is. In this place, there was a rock band running through which separated two zones of the place. We had to understand where it took the water and where, therefore, it could emerge for us to take it. So you're using the earth as a bank to store groundwater, and then you pick it up. And actually, one well provides a major amount of water because we made sure that it percolates and fills on that. This is raised. It's about 8 feet high and filled with different materials, which allow bacteria to grow in them. So when you put the wastewater on top, the bacteria actually chomp on the carbon and the nitrogen and clean up the water. The root zones of 8 feet of trickling filter, then you pick it up again, and if you want to, you can push it back into another cycle. By the time you do it 2 cycles, you get clear water, which is good for agriculture. And that's what they practice.
So
Next is
the
about-
next bit we've been wondering.
No, you can say.
So we've been working is asking this question: can our buildings work as waste sinks? Can our yeah. So these are some of the early attempts we did: collecting plastic, which is strewn around, putting it in foundations, so it stays there, as long as the building stays. Filler slabs out of waste keyboards, discarded keyboards.
Yeah, I mean, this is not needed. This was.
Nice. So then there is this project we did a few years back for Mr. Raghavan. This is a gentleman in his 70s. He had 2 daughters, an inherited home which was built over time, added as they could afford it. So it had issues, light, ventilation, structural cracks. So he wanted to leave 2 homes for his daughters, but then he also looked at whatever's in the house as a resource. So he asked us, can we use most of it back in this building? So luckily for us, this was a large plot of land where you could take down the building and hold the material till you could put it back. Things like stone, wood, they're fairly easy. You take it, you use it back here. But we also had other ways like, so yeah, this is the house. That's how the plan was. You had wooden roofs, Madras terrace roofs from where you have wood, old doors, windows, all simple. So we came up with this new plan, a large area of the plot which was to be left empty to be a garden later. So we started taking the house down. So this is just like you segregate waste at home. You don't demolish the house, but you dismantle the house into different components: brick, concrete, flooring aggregate, and so on. So these are the easier parts: stone and wood and steel. So then you process it. Now, this was one of the early projects. So we did look at machines, but it was too expensive and the space we had was not enough. So it was all done manually. All the concrete was broken down into smaller chunks to be used back as aggregate. So this drawing, you see, we had a peculiar situation here. Once we started digging, we discovered that this area was probably an old lake bed. It was very soft soil. The more you dig, the softer it gets. It was like, soap. So thankfully, we had engineers who could give us alternates in foundations, not just concrete. So what was proposed here was a duct pile. So we made lots of wells. These are 42 wells into which you make new concrete out of the old debris, old concrete that was processed, and you fill it into these. Once that's done, add a grade beam, and that's it.
All the concrete waste went under the ground.
And then the old foundation, which was of stone, it was stone on a sand bed, was used to build the walls. We needed some more walls. We had bricks, so those were used, and then we needed some more walls for which we made earth bricks. The old plinth beam, which was of stone, became the new staircase. So this was something that we had to design on the go, because it's the first time we did it. We didn't know what would we get next and how do we use it. So that's the new house that you see. So the old stone wall, the foundation is now the stone wall. The beams are now the windows. So we had 2 houses, one for each daughter on each floor. So that was his safety grill with, for the front door, which is now your skylight grill. That's the lower house. So this is yet another new project. So what we learned from there, that your building can be now a resource for new materials. So this is a new project we did where you design the building that it can be taken apart after a few years, but all the materials can be reused.
The client had taken the land for a 5-year lease. So not that he asked us whether the building can be dismantled later. He had no idea that such a thing could happen. So when he came, we said, yeah, we should work at something that you can take it away, because you're putting so much money. And in ecological framework, economy is a very important factor too. And it's why leave it just like that? So we told him that we'll work at the design that the whole building can be transported at any time, but it's not on wheels. It could be removed. So we looked at each component of it. So even the foundation, he can dig it and take away. So it's again the stone slabs. The only thing which he may leave a little bit of concrete at the place, but everything else he can take away. So the stone slabs he can take away the walls, the support system, roofs, everything. So this was based on something called Emilia Reggio philosophy. Reggio Emilia philosophy, I don't remember those things. So it was just fun doing the design because it required that create a community of classrooms, not just classrooms. So if you create a city, so the classrooms open into a piazza. This city,
Reggio Emilia are two villages in
Italy, and it's after the World War. The mothers decided that our children need education in a different manner and let the community teach rather than some school or some teachers whom we employ. So it's more based on that philosophy. So each classrooms have to open into a plaza, a piazza, and other spaces. Well, we used curved walls because the walls were not taking load. So there was a big difference, and we thought, okay, I'm sorry, we'll go to this one first. So we said, what would be the way the roof will be supported? And we took the image of a tree, and the children are studying under the tree. So we we made this model with something like 20 tree columns, which the structural engineer reduced it to just 8. So that's the way. The facade is designed to breathe, to bring in light, and also to create privacy. So that's the model. But we came up with, the structural engineer came up with this column, so which at different levels reduces the spans. We had to make a model for the contractor to understand how this column would work. That's the school. And we used paver blocks for the flooring, so they can remove the floor too, and below it is just quarry dust, so they can take the quarry dust also. That's how it is inside. This is the toilet. So it's a circular toilet where all the pipelines come into this circular space, where that's the chamber inside the toilet. So if anything happens, you can repair it, and you use this as a little high space where you can get the kid up there, and if you need to clean or put up the dress, or the ayahs or the children can wait. So that's the whole section of the place and the space, how it's being used. And we had to follow Vastu. So it had one slope from south to north. So we get extra height, which used as mezzanines. This is the interior now. The walls are of paper rolls, some of the walls. It was just a trial. So you work, and the clients too didn't know about it, we too didn't know about it, but we had to learn. So it's also important that you try some things that the clients, but you work out the details that it would last. But it also helps in terms of the sound, because it's a very large space with one roof. It allows for the sound not to be very, what do you call it, sound insulation. This is the facade. This is the play spaces within the school, so they learn about water early enough. That's the inside. Okay, there's one.
Yes.
Yes, it's in Bangalore. Yeah. Yes. But it's not acoustic. Okay. So it wouldn't reverberate, but it's not acoustic at all. So you would hear the sound from a different classroom into here. And what one was reading, especially about that school in Japan where you have the playground on top, I forget, I think many of you would have seen, where they did the research, and it say that if there is some more of extra sound, the children are more attentive to their studies than being a very quiet atmosphere. So that's about the sun, but also in terms of the windows, they say that now you should allow the kid to go out, play and come back, or see out, because you have the short-term disturbance and the long-term disturbance. So in the long term is that you do scribbles because you can't, you cannot look out, you cannot do anything else, you get bored and you do that. But the short term allows you for. So here the classrooms are open, you can go from one classroom to the other two for a child, not
And
stifle is yours.
yeah, but a lens to use for design at any scale, that it should first aim for equity. And so the equity is aimed for by the workers who build the homes are equal participants in the architecture as much as anybody. That sounds like a ghostly voice. So we just use these appropriateness for the design, building design and water and wastewater, saying that should start to think about equity in design, and equity is not only in terms of the building itself, but the process of building. And technical, of course, Chitra and Sharath explained about the appropriateness of it being local. At the water scale, we are still seeing an institutional gap, which does not foster many of the solutions to translate itself to scale or be absorbed by the state. So we are wondering, as part of the trust design, so how do we create those institutional frameworks and skill dissemination so that it stays long, sustainability stays longer. And of course, a lot of things in the ecological framework get distorted. For example, water is subsidized, pipe water is subsidized in our city. So when pipe water is subsidized, alternative forms of water use is no longer financially viable. People won't do rainwater harvesting, people won't recycle water because anyway, hey, I'm getting pipe water at a cheap price. So how do we address the finances of sustainability is something that bothers us, and we try to do it at policy
It
level.
also happens with cement and steel too.
Yeah.
And we still have to use that.
And so each one of the ideas that are discussed here, we try to see how it can fit into a legal framework. For example, rainwater harvesting now, I was lucky enough to become part of the policy framework for the government and to make it legally mandatory for new homes to do rainwater harvesting. So we learn from experience and push it out at scale. So solar energy use is now mandatory in all new buildings, so solar water heaters. So we were able to help push that policy framework also. Mud buildings, for example, how do we make sure that earth buildings get a property tax break? Is it necessary? Should it not be done so that more use of earth from the site itself goes around? So we look at legal frameworks, and finally groundwater, the framework for managing groundwater, which is completely missing. It's a sort of a private resource which anybody can take. How do we push it to become a common pool resource? So that's some of the thinking that we do. Yeah, this is a favorite cartoon. I don't know how many times it comes. So one of the examples for that was this particular gated community of 360 plots or sites, which is on the periphery of the city, which is not connected to the city utility. So there are 360 plots. What happens then is that every one of the plot owners would drill a borewell for their water requirement, every one of them. And the average depth of the borewell in this part is about 1,000 feet. So you spend 2 lakh rupees a minimum to drill water. So you can imagine, here's a small can of water, there are 360 straws slipping in, and each competing with the other to become deeper, and each therefore destroying the other effort. So that's water, as groundwater as a private resource. How do we push it to a common pool resource? We were lucky to work with the association and persuade them, and let them know the feeling. So what they did was they banned private borewells. The association did that, and they sank 3 borewells and said that that water would be equally distributed to everybody. But then the flip side was that all 360 had to intervene to recharge the aquifer. You flipped it around now, 360 straws putting water into the can and only 3 straws drawing it. So we did a bit of modeling, and we figured out that even with that, those good works being done, if people were consuming at 270 liters per capita per day, it would still not be enough. So they had to get down their consumption to about 130 liters. How would they do that? So the community decided to price water at such a price that if you consume more than 20,000 liters a month, you would pay an enormously high price. You would pay 120 rupees a kiloliter. In 1 month, demand fell by 50%. And the next thing was that the monies that they were paying was going to the community itself. It was not going to the government, or it was not going to a private operator. It was for the community to invest. So when they raised enough money, they improved their sewage treatment plant. The same SBT that we talked about, they put in sewage treatment plants, and now they supply treated wastewater to all the homes. So their demand has further fallen to about 90 liters per person per day. So this community is now net surplus. It's actually providing water to the city rather than drawing from it as a parasite. And this community example is now being followed by other communities. Now, gated communities, it works because there's an association, there's a boundary, and there's a law. How do we push it from gated communities to broader democratic ward level and to the government level is a big challenge because you don't have the right institutions. And so now when you scale it up from an individual building, an apartment, a layout, a gated community, you move to a watershed. A lake is a watershed, a micro watershed. The lake which we are talking about now is Jakur Lake in the north of the city, which has 19 square kilometers of water coming into the lake. So how do we work at a watershed level to make it sustainable? One thing to do in this particular case was all the stormwater should come into the lake. The sewage that flows in has a treatment plant, a 10 million liters per day sewage treatment plant, and treated wastewater comes into the lake through a constructed wetland. So all the wastewater accumulates in the lake, all the stormwater accumulates there, it recharges the ground. We figured out that this lake recharges 8 million liters of water every day, good enough to support a community of 80,000. Now, the lake itself provides livelihoods through fishing. There are 200 to 250 kgs of fish caught every day. A sewage treatment plant run by the city does not work because it's a cost center. You're spending money all the time to treat sewage. But if you look at the bigger ecosystem, the fish can pay for the sewage treatment plant. The big challenge is, can you pay the electricity bill through fish? And that ecosystem approach is missing because we don't have the right institutions. And as you see, livelihoods can be fostered, groundwater can be recharged, lakes can be revived, wastewater can be treated, and the city gets water from these wells, for example, at 75 paisa per 1,000 liters, as opposed to 82 rupees which the city otherwise pays to bring water from the river Kaveri, which is 100 kilometers away. Embodied energy is less. Scales of economies are immensely different, and ecology actually makes a heck of a lot of economic sense. And the only barrier is the institutional and governance barrier. So that's our a bigger challenge we work on. That's treated wastewater coming into a constructed wetland, which is the biodiversity spot for the lake. So this is some of the work that the trust does as a conjunct of the solutions, biome solutions. So these are sort of parallel projects. Yeah, sure. That's
Thank you.
it.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thanks.